religious institutions are not supposed to engage in political activity, which includes donations, obviously. Look, it's for that reason the U.S. government gives churches tax-exempt status so that they stay out of political campaigns. However, according to a new ProPublica report, along with the Texas Tribune, well, in Texas, and probably many other places, but definitively in Texas, there are churches out there that are engaging in political activity, again, including donations. Now, the Texas Tribune and ProPublica in their report looked at a recent election in West Texas. Now, in this election, it was Republicans versus Republicans. Okay, so you had pro-business, pro-corporate, establishment Republicans versus the very right-wing fundamentalist Republicans. And these religious conservatives actually ended up losing by quite a bit. Now, these very conservative Christian candidates who did campaign on putting more religion in government were rejected, but those candidates were also heavily backed by local area churches. In fact, on May 5th, the day before the election, these churches had donated a total of $800 to the campaign of one Scott Beard. Scott Beard is a pastor who was running for city council. So now, in violation of the Johnson Amendment, a law passed in 1954 by Congress prohibiting nonprofits from intervening in political campaigns, these churches had violated that amendment by engaging again in politicking, political donations. So that's not a good thing. Now, Beard, a senior pastor at Fountain Gate Fellowship, said the donations were a mistake. Oh, they mistakenly gave me $800. I will return their money. Oh, really? Okay. Now, Beard said via text message after the election that the money paid by the churches was only intended to cover the cost of meals at one of his fundraisers, which you were having at a church. He said he returned the money and is in the process of amending his campaign finance reports, which apparently had some other issues. Now, Dewey Hall, the pastor of Fountain Gate Merkle Church, which is nearly 18 miles west of Abilene, Texas, and not affiliated with Beard's church, told ProPublica that the Tribune before the election that Beard had told him that his church couldn't give Beard's campaign a $200 donation. Even though Hall said that Beard would be a good councilman. We need to have Christians in politics nowadays. Wait, we do have Christians in politics. They're just not allowed to implement Christian theocracy. Now, I'll tell you, by the way, the kind of councilman that he would be based on some of his policy positions, which were not very popular. Now, a representative of Remnant Church, which Beard reported gave him $400, responded to a question via Facebook to say that its donation was intended for Fountain Gate Fellowship Church, not for Beard's campaign. Then how did it end up in his campaign? Well, that's really weird. They're supposed to be separate. They're supposed to be his campaign, and then there's supposed to be the church funding. You're supposed to keep them in separate buckets. If you start using church funding to pay for your campaign, that is illegal. You cannot do that. Big problem. Now, the representative said, oh, they must have made a mistake. We'll look into it. When asked who they were, what their name was, to identify themselves, they did not. They just did not. Neither Hall nor Remnant Church responded to additional questions after the election, and so they just kind of want to sweep this thing, under the rug. Also adding,
I have not loved this conversation.
Not interested. Not interested. I did not love this. Not going to talk to this. Now, Bruce Tenser, pastor of Hope Chapel Foursquare Church, known as Hope for Life Church, said the $200 Beard's campaign filing listed as having come from his church was an appreciation gift for Tenser that he used to pay for meals at Beard's fundraiser for himself, another pastor, and their wives. Quote, obviously, had I known that it would be considered a campaign contribution, I would have not paid with the check. This is not some dark conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy, I swear. Really? Now that I'm in trouble for it? Or could be?
My.
Is it though? I pray Mayor-elect Weldon all the best as the newly elected council. Well, again, because he had backed the losing side. But hey, we never meant to give the money. I never meant to get the money. No. I don't believe that. I believe you never meant to get caught. According to this investigative report, which again, ProPublica is doing some really good work. They're dropping some really, really important stories along with Texas Tribune. It's an excellent match. Journalism still exists. According to the report, Beard has had at least 2 pending state ethics complaints filed against his campaign. One comes from former Dyess Air Force Base Commander Michael Bob Starr, who alleges that Beard left in-kind donations from his own church, a nonprofit corporation, off of his campaign finance report. So he's like, no, this guy's using his church money to fund his campaign. And you're not obviously recording it, which is what? Fraud. It's fraud. You're leaving these off of the report and funding your campaign through your own nonprofit organization, religious nonprofit organization that gets tax breaks from the government. That's a pretty serious allegation. Now, another one, different complaint, comes from Abilene attorney Kristen Postal, who alleges that Beard's campaign finance reports were also incomplete, incorrect, and showed that he had accepted an anonymous donation. That said, Beard, in an interview, acknowledged the existence of complaints and said, "We made some errors. Oopsie. What are you going to do? We messed up on our campaign reports. So we're just going to go back and we're going to amend those. And, we're going to fix it. Don't worry. Yeah, I wonder how that's going to turn out. Here's what he said, by the way. We're amending those and we're going to resubmit them. And then we'll just have to deal with whatever. If there's financial penalties or whatever, we'll just have to pay them and learn a lesson from it. Well, that's not the lesson that you're ultimately going to learn from my experience. The lesson is don't get caught. That's his lesson. All right. Now, both Starr and Postal say they plan to file additional state ethics complaints against Beard's campaign for accepting donations from the churches, which are, again, all supposed to be nonprofit corporations in Texas. Now, if it were just the donations, too, that's bad enough. But there's more. It turns out they received free advertising from the churches by allowing these campaign signs to be put on church grounds. So for me, that seems like it's an in-kind donation from the church because you were essentially advertising. That's political ad spending, or the equivalent of. I mean, seems like that could be a little bit of an issue. At least 5 churches displayed campaign signs for Beard and 2 other Abilene candidates, Ryan Goodwin, who unsuccessfully ran for mayor, and James Sargent, an unsuccessful city council candidate. The 3 candidates touted their involvement in an effort, and this is, by the way, what they, why apparently the churches are supporting them. They were involved in an effort to get abortion outlawed in Abilene specifically. Now remember, this is Texas that already has incredibly draconian anti-abortion measures, but Abilene, they wanted to go further. And they ended up working with Texas Right to Life, an anti-choice group, collecting thousands of signatures to bring the ordinance to a council vote. Abilene's ordinance, which passed, went even further than Texas's already draconian state laws, making it a crime to assist a city resident in getting an abortion. So now criminalizing someone who helps them, even outside of Texas. So you can leave Abilene and you can leave the state, and still they're going to want you to, be criminalized, be punished for helping somebody get an abortion. That's ridiculous. What happened to interstate commerce? And of course, it also expands who can potentially face lawsuits relating to aiding or abetting a prohibited abortion. Other things that they had also pushed, along with these massively anti-choice, anti-freedom measures, are book bans dealing with LGBTQ plus books and bans on drag shows, because of course. These are the issues that are being pushed by these would-be politicians, and they're very prevalent in right-wing churches. And now, funny enough, coincidence, these churches getting caught funding these very same would-be politicians that were also, at least one of them, was a pastor. This is not a coincidence. This is it's not an accident. This is part of a concerted effort to make this country into a Christian nation. We are not a Christian nation. We're a secular nation. We have the First Amendment, the freedom of religion, but we also have a freedom from religion and a separation, a wall of separation between church and state. This is something that these kinds of people do not believe in. Christian nationalists want to tear down that particular wall. They want to build other walls, ironically, on the southern border, but apparently tear down the wall between church and state so that the church will run the government and run people's lives. That's what it is. Let's be honest. Their plan involves taking over local offices, running in local elections, running in school boards, winning on those, getting various state level positions, as well as national positions. Oh, and of course the courts. And again, the goal here, as I mentioned, destroy the separation of church and state, destroy the First Amendment as it exists, so that we would become a theocracy under one brand of Christianity. Remember, there's a lot of different denominations here in Christianity alone. Who decides which one is dominant? Which one reigns supreme? No, something like this, turning the United States into a theocracy, a Christian theocracy, will just rip the country apart. And if you're in support of that goal, then that's what you're going to get. Because the country will tear itself apart on sectarian religious lines. With a very, very small minority of extremists like this. No, the reason that we have a separation of church and state, again, is so that the government doesn't run the church, because nobody would like that, and the church doesn't run the government. It's as much to protect religion, the freedom of religion, as to protect everyone else from one particular brand of religion. But they don't see it that way. After the election, Beard returned to his pulpit and said, well, you got to get more involved in politics. You need to look for ways to influence the city outside of the church. Quote, in a world that's grown kind of increasingly more hostile towards the church, I'm all the more motivated and really challenged to continue building here at Fountain Gate a healthy and dynamic local church that not only impacts its community, but impacts its state, its nation, and the nations of the world. Now, look, we're not hostile to the church. What we're hostile to is the church trying to control other people. Look, if you're a religious person, you want to live by these rules, that's totally fine. Like, nobody's preventing you from living your life. If you don't like abortion, you don't get one. If you don't like, drag shows, don't watch one. I mean, it's pretty simple. You don't want to read an LGBTQ plus book or a book about racism? Don't read it. Don't read it. You have these choices. You don't want to watch woke Hollywood shows? Then don't watch them. Don't.
The wokers.
You don't have the right to control everybody else's life. And that's ultimately what they're trying to do. What they're trying to accomplish is the ability to use the government to impress their political religious values onto you. Again, nobody cares about your religion. Nobody cares about what you do in the privacy of your own home with your own family, in your own life. Nobody cares. Believe what you want, do what you want, as long as it doesn't harm another person. But you try to control us, then yeah. And that's the reason so many people are angry at the church now, is because they keep trying to control our lives. Keep your own religion to yourself and in your churches. That's why you get tax-exempt status. But if you keep pushing this, then you should absolutely, all the churches should absolutely 100% lose that tax-exempt status. Because obviously, they're not holding up their end of the agreement. You want to be in politics? Okay, pay to play, bitch. Pay to play.